Morning and welcome to today's edition of Avero Live. I'm AV, I'm the founder and CEO at Avero, and we are an independent agnostic consulting firm that focuses on the government sector in the United States. Today, I have a very special guest with me, Jan Baan, calling in from Amsterdam. He is considered the father of ERP. I don't know if you would agree, but people call him that.
I'm
And
long in that area. Yeah, over 45
um,
years.
Yep, he's founded the Bond Company in '78 and developed what probably was the first ERP software in 1979. Grew tremendously, sold to Infor, and then did it again and again. Created WebEx when the internet was just starting off, and
I participated in WebEx. I was the
participated. I'm
first
sorry.
outside shareholder.
Okay, and still, you were there,
Yeah.
and and has really created this industry in many ways. Jan, thank you for being here today.
My
I'm
pleasure, Evie.
honored. And for our audience that's calling in, let us know where you're calling in from. Send your questions in the chat box. It's open, and we'll answer as many as we can. If we don't, we'll follow up. But this live stream will also be available later on all of our channels, and I'm excited to interact with you all. So, Jan, welcome to the show. I'm really thrilled to have you. I've been listening and following you for a while, and I really want to talk about a few things. One is what is wrong with ERP in its current state? Two, how do our clients, which are local governments, state governments, utilities, transit agencies,
Yeah.
that are traditionally a little bit behind by design because they don't want to jump into the
Yeah.
latest and greatest. And this is a really pivotal time in terms of digital transformation for our clients. So let's start off with just your general thoughts on the state of the union on enterprise systems.
Now, if you look enterprise systems, we call it enterprise, but the name
Mhm.
is even wrong because it never became enterprise. It is still entity.
Mm,
Enterprise means, and we even talk today of the digital enterprise. That means in a digital enterprise, you expect that in your whole enterprise, all the data is semantic available and is available to execute. It's all nonsense. ERP became the mother of all complexity.
mm,
And what we have seen, ERP started as a silo.
yeah.
And realized that ERP started more as best practice. In Baan, I did it. We see Oracle, we see SAP, and it started more for complex processes for manufacturing companies. That was the beginning.
Hmm.
And the governments rely too much on those processes because they are not using those functions in this one.
Right.
And that means it's more than only an administrative system. It's more started to bring part of processes together, but you have some elements, we call it in manufacturing, idea to market. It starts some things with CAP-CAM, some things, and then it's come with a bill of material to ERP. Then it moves to order to cash, and then you see other companies like Salesforce, you see CPQ, to how procure and all these pay to elements. And then you go more in the elements of what the real code, the enabling elements. You see the workday. Now, all call it ERP, but all have their own characteristics. But the problem is, most solutions, even 90% of the solutions, are done with technology from the 90s. And that's
Right.
a big problem. And you see
Hmm.
the biggest disasters in the government. They do these RFPs. It should be this mafia business. This RFPs is maybe one of the biggest problems because you have no good partner. And the biggest companies, the system integrators, make the biggest mistakes. They have the best chance for the next RFP.
Yeah.
And you are overruled in all those stuff. And then you start some things, what we called a COTS, a commercial off the shelf product. Now, could be
Hmm.
Oracle, could be SAP, uh, could be even Workday. It's a
Yeah.
little more modern, but it's still a transactional system. Now, and
Hmm.
what is the biggest problem? You see, you have two data streams. You have a data stream from best practice, and we call in a database is a transactional system. But then when the processes are going more downstream, you see that these end-to-end processes are more case driven, more rule driven, especially in the government. And those people are not aware of it, and they are misled with too much these transactional oriented systems.
Mm-hmm.
And they are not able to handle both of the streams. Now, what we have seen now that the internet came, and I started again because I came to the conclusion after 20 years leading SAP, I could win the Boeing deal. That was one of the most precious deals, 40,000 users in the 90s,
Wow.
winning them from Oracle and from SAP. But everything was not built in the browser. Now, and
Right.
end of last century, the browser came,
Mm-hmm.
NetSuite came, and if you see these elements, and then with the browser, it was killed by Microsoft because they say, okay, we don't like it, we like to do it ourselves, and Microsoft took it moreover with Office and have the browser. But in the browser, you are dealing with humans, and in the browser, you have the social data. And everything in the browser was more used for entertainment, for my PC, my own computer, my own mobile,
Yeah.
etc. But in today's world, everything can be united together. Now, that means then we see now three data streams. We see the silos. Then we hope that we do in an entity, in a department, all these end-to-end processes. We bring the processes together. But then it moved more downstream to what we call the job to be done. And one of the most famous guy was Clayton Christensen, the innovator's dilemma,
Mm-hmm.
one of the most famous MIT professors. And he came to the conclusion everything should be focused on the job to be done. And that's a big problem. ERP cannot help you in the job to be done because ERP brings off the shelf, it brings what we call best practice
Yeah.
on a generic way and put it to your throat. And you say, okay, so far when it is financials, you can accept this. But when it comes to specific processes, you can't do it. Now, then this commercial off the shelf, smaller ones could even not build it. But in the last 10, 15 years, the internet came more stronger because you've seen in the beginning of the century, the browser came, and then we have something what we call PaaS, platform as a service. You see Salesforce, they built their cloud. We see also, and if you look to Workday, they built their cloud, but it was still more transactional oriented. But then when that was the infancy of the internet, but now we're moving to the maturity of the internet, and everything is now done in big data. And
Right.
especially for utility, you have a connection between IoT, the Internet of Things, with your big data. Everything is then run by Google, you see, by BigQuery, and it gives 10 times or 100 times more simplification and productivity. And then we have now something what we call microservices. Now let's focus on this.
Mm.
These microservices allows you now with small Lego parts to edit them to these traditional ERP solutions. And if you look to complex manufacturing systems like a car or some things, what we do there is we call it decoupling. Not
Yeah.
all things are all united together. Now we like to go to monolithic, but it should be stupid. You should take best of breed components. And what is a product means you have two elements: decoupling and late binding. Now, decoupling means you can decouple it every moment and bring other components through it. And late binding means you do it on the latest moment.
Mm-hmm.
If you look, Boeing is maybe an advanced company, but less advanced than a car maker. If you see building an airplane means a monster is coming in a big hole, and then 9 months later this monster will fly. A
Yeah.
Tesla car, every 20 seconds a new Tesla car is dropping off, and 1 hour before this 20 seconds you can even change the engine.
Mm.
That should be the case what we do in business, and this job to be done should be changeable on the latest moment. But not everything has to change every moment. Some data can be once a week, but some data have to come the last moment. Now, that is
Yeah.
what you see. You need the whole data stream end to end. And in the government, most data is done in old fashioned databases, where you have tens of thousands, sometimes 100,000 of database tables. And it destroyed everything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reason in the Netherlands you see projects with the government, the Dutch Ministry of Defense, they spent more than $1 billion US, and even totally waste of money
Wow.
building SAP, using SAP for their processes. And then they update these processes, and IBM has to do it, and another there, but we see 100 million now coming to $1 billion is even again wasted in this element.
Mm-hmm.
And in most departments, they spend 100 millions are anywhere and have no value. Now, you can you can make the cost at least 90% cheaper, but it's not only cheap cost. On the end, what we have is less low tools for the productization of AI of the knowledge worker. Now, that is, and let me, if can I paint a little the story
Please. Yeah.
where we should focus on how can we help that the knowledge workers can be at least 2 times more productive. And and then we bring in what we call agentic AI.
Yeah.
And this agentic AI have not so much a meaning in the upstream processes. The more downstream, the more you're coming to the consumer, to the business, to the B2B, to the B2C. That means try to decouple it and try to bring with your workflow rules
Hmm.
the job to be done on the latest moment. You should bring all those components together. And that's what we
So,
call this legal
yeah.
model.
No, and you bring up a good point. Everybody's talking about AI.
Mm.
And every major vendor is saying they're building the next greatest thing. It's
Yeah,
going to be baked into the AI. It'll be in the code.
yeah,
It will do the work for you. There'll be agents running around.
yeah.
One, I haven't seen that in reality. No one's
That's not it.
demoed that to me, right? And two, is that the right approach?
No,
Because
it's terrible.
um, yeah,
You are
go ahead.
misleaded because call it. Some people say the mafia are making less gross margin than even the big vendors on this moment. The mafia cannot make 90% gross profit, and
Hmm.
why is that? We have only 7 companies who have a value of 70,000, the magnificent 70,000 billions of market cap. Now, this market cap should go to the users, to the business, and they're only bringing tools.
Yeah.
And what they hope in the future, and everything is vendor locked in. And what you say
Hmm.
is a point. If you look therein, then in AV, what you think the the AI is built in the code, and it's the most super thing you can do because then the AI belongs to the vendor and not to you. The AI should belong to the government, to the job to be done, and that's what we do in microservices.
Hmm.
We bring AI in microservices, and the more downstream, 100 times more value is there. That means the value is where you have the collaboration in the simple job to be done. And if you can do this job twice better, you have a better citizen. Yeah, your processes are much better. Uh, then even and if you see the legal elements can be decoupled, can be changed, and they're now all stored in concrete. That's the biggest problem. What you mentioned is everyone is stored in the code, and the code will be compiled in a compiler, and it's staying in the concrete of the business, and you can't change it. And that is the problem, that all these hundreds of thousands of billions of spending and no benefit for the end user, because it's not done in the social elements of the end user, is not accepted. And that's what we have now today. If you decouple it, then I bring a tool to optimize the job to be done for the end user. And the end user can even bring his private elements. With what time is he available? The social elements of the end user. They're all becoming by the job to be done with all the privacy, what we even bring in there.
Yeah.
And these monsters on the beginning, that means you are forced to do everything with these monsters. Now,
Hmm.
although they go in new technology waves, but they are not changing their behavior. It is not native cloud. And if you look to the user interface, most times it stinks. It's too complicated. You do not understand it. Only the smart people who understand a little the complex business process in the beginning, they can understand it a little, but the executors do not understand it.
Yeah.
And in the microservice, you participate therein. And in the microservice, we have even not only low code, but we have no code. That means it can be done without IT and do it yourself.
That's the grand promise, right? It's you still need some sort of coding skills. It's not.
Yeah, but wait a moment.
Yeah.
This is also decoupled. What we do is 2 elements. Low code
Hmm.
has still a big problem.
Yeah.
Low code is promising. If you look to this low code, you can very smart. You win the POC because you show some things. Hey, I can build very some things, a proof of concept, but the last mile cannot be done in low code.
Tell me
And
what that means. Last mile.
the last mile, the last elements, you can generate a lot of stuff.
Hmm.
Let me say, with low code, you can do only more simple processes.
Yeah.
And the complexity, you can do it, and you can do it back in the backend solution still. Now,
Mm-hmm.
what we do is we generate code. We call it high code. We generate the code, and everything on the latest moment can even done with a Java programmer.
Yeah.
But it means we increase the speed of a Java programmer with 4 times, because but the end can be still done by the Java programmer only for the complex elements. But when it comes real downstream, then we have no code.
Mm-hmm.
And in the no code area, we have some things what we see, this elements where the end user can do everything themselves. And that is a much more attractive element therein.
That's the
I mean,
promise. Yeah.
like now you see some things like Power Apps or App Sheets,
Mm-hmm.
but they are limited.
Mm-hmm.
They are limited. They are not controlling all the whole workflow. But it's some things, and you do it with a spreadsheet together. It's a little spreadsheet plus. But
Yeah.
now we see low code, who is extremely strong in this downstream simple processes for the citizen. But it's, and there you need no longer a spreadsheet, because the most dangerous part is a spreadsheet.
Mm-hmm.
What you do, we call it the digital enterprise, but to a certain point you bring, say, SQL data in. Now, this dynamic data, but the data very soon is the processes are dying, and then you bring it over to a spreadsheet, and then you deal with a PDF, and it means that it's no longer digital,
Mm.
and that is the
Yeah.
biggest problem. Now, what we do with this low code, we make it semantical elements. We can adopt the spreadsheet, but the spreadsheet is becoming now a dynamic way. It's a dynamic microservices. Now, that brings an extremely value to the end users, and it can be done without IT.
Mm.
The layer before, you have more the business processes, and there you take
Yeah.
what's called low code. I call it more high code, and there is where you generate it.
So a few things, stood out to me. Traditionally, especially in our clientele, right? People listening today, uh, they have, if they're unhappy with their green screen system
Yeah,
someone built for them 20 years ago,
yeah, that's terrible.
there are two options today. One, stay with it, be unhappy, or go do this RFP process and deal with the mafia, as you call
Yeah,
it, and then pick a product and then eventually be unhappy because
the RFP
nothing
is
works out. Yeah.
the RFP is the most dangerous part, and then you're deeper in the pitfall
Yeah.
and deeper in the vendor lock-in, and you go deeper in a monolithic solution because you can't go out, and you have no expertise by the professionals. That
Mm-hmm.
means you, as a government organization, are already misleaded. You don't know, you don't mind, you cannot fight with it, and the end product is still much different, and they make more. Therefore, the cost will increase 4 or 5 times therein because
Unless they use us to selection,
see,
like
and
independent
yeah,
consulting. Yeah.
peer, and we see is what the real this everything what you'll do in bringing these elements. You should do it more in small pieces and continue this stuff therein. That's
Mm-hmm.
becoming more important. One second.
Yeah. So I think what you're getting to is there's a third option. I'm not saying stick with your AS400 green screen, but modernization doesn't always have to be all in.
Yeah.
You can have it incremental using this low code, no code approach and stuff you're doing with your latest venture, Rapid, right? Tell us about how that fits into this
Now,
puzzle.
let me say in this way, what we really do and looking in is not only low code and high code what we see therein, but it's an element what we even built long ago in Rapid. Let me first say the foundation. I started in Baan with one of the first in Unix that was in the early 80s, end of the 70s, early 80s. We built everything in a relational database with
Mm-hmm.
tables, and there we could build up. We could build a Boeing deal. It was real clean. The data model was clean, etc. But it was isolated to a silo.
Mm-hmm.
Then, but I came to the conclusion after 20 years it's obsolete because nothing is built in a browser. Then I started from scratch again and say we should not focus on a silo, we should focus on many silos, and we call that business process management.
Mm-hmm.
In the silo, there is no process, the process is hidden, and the process, the best practice, is hidden and will be executed with a computer screen. And you have no flexibility in the process. There we
Yeah.
say we bring all the silos together and we build it end to end, and we do it with metadata.
Mm-hmm.
The data became metadata, and then on the top of these processes, you could do you bespoke, you could do it individual, and then you have another stream. We call it more the case management stream. In the beginning, you have only a transaction stream, but here you have a case management stream. That means the rule engine is flexible and can be changed 1 second before the transaction. In this ERP system is stored in the concrete. Now, we did
Yeah.
already 20 years, and then we did it with BPM, but BPM was for the CIOs, and so too complicated. And everything you have to bring it there together was high promising, and you build entities and you model, and it is modeling. What you model is what you get.
Mm-hmm.
Still, you did it with the beginning of the internet, but not with UX, with modern screens, and too complicated. Now we move to extremely modern screens. The consumer, look to the gamification. Look there, we see the modern screens. The colors are perfect. How you can do it only belongs to when you are at home. At home, you have better skills than in the office. And
Yeah.
your kids are by far smarter than yourself because they know exactly with this very good user interface, etc. Now,
Uh-huh.
that is what we called the job to be done. And in the job to be done, you can take microservices. But what we are now doing, now I built in 15 years ago a tool, say, okay, we have all these documents, and these documents are statical and you cannot deal with it. Now,
Yeah.
then we built with in-depth Google technology, with OCR, we we take all those documents as say dynamic microservices. That means every document, even for transportation, for financial, etc., became a microservices totally on top, and we could take them out of the systems. That means the documents can go further in microservice technology. You bring them out of the system, and you go further with the document. We call it dynamic documents,
Right.
and we have them already for 15 years. Now we move a step further. On this moment, it brings a revolution. I'm now able with what we call it concurrent engineering and reverse engineering. Permanently, I can see all the green screens, and the green screens in 5-10 minutes are explaining me already 70% of 80% of the data model and all the elements therein. Now, and this technology will become a replacement of all the old software, step by step. And you do it no longer in big banks, you do it in small pieces and bring them together. That means you bring totally new ones and you build them from scratch in microservices, or you rebuild the old functionality, but still in dynamic way. Yeah, you need a
Yeah.
dynamic way.
Mm-hmm.
And that brings a tremendous differentiator. And that is a dangerous element for the traditional players.
Jan, customization has been a bad word over the last 20
Yeah,
years because SaaS and the promise of SaaS has said this thing should work. I will, buy it off the shelf and just
yeah,
use it.
yeah,
And the customers have had to change business processes to fit
yeah.
products. Is customization coming back?
More, more. If you look to a car, this, let me say, if you have a mobile, and
Hmm.
if you take this nice one, even this Google one, you see all this modern stuff therein. Now,
Yeah.
this is 100% generic,
Hmm.
but for me, it's 100% customized.
Yeah.
This is mass customization. This modern technology can do this. Software could not do it.
Hmm.
And customization was a disaster for software. But now we go with these microservices, we go for more customization, but only at last end. It's and more mass. 80% can be generic, and 20% is on the later, we call it late binding, on the later moment, only when the job to be done, then we do it specific for you. And then and then the benefit is that you can do your job 3 times faster and better. And then you have more EBITDA and
Hmm.
more profit. But the front end, let me say it in car terminology, a Tesla car. It's like 3 ways in the modern Tesla car, where you have autopilot, etc. And and every moment you have anywhere electricity, your car will be renewed. But there is still mechanics in the car, and there's still electronics in the car.
Yeah.
Now, the chassis is maybe the mechanics, and you should not customize that. You should
Hmm.
make it generic, and even the electronics. But the software can be customized. Now, that should be the same in the business process. Take care. Many processes, even the government, why could they not share all the generic processes with all the departments? They're more or less the same. And no one is
Hmm.
doing it. It's stupid. No.
Yeah.
That means, and maybe you can take Workday for that, or you can take Salesforce for that, but it's not for the end process. It's for the starting point. Now take Salesforce, take Workday, take Oracle, anywhere if you like it for a while, but reduce the users and do never the downstream processes there. Decouple them. You decouple them. It means in the end you need maybe only one UI
Yeah.
from all the data. That means you bring if you have 10,000 users, bring it back to 500 or anywhere, and then make very specific elements. What we call in those elements, we call them more microservices. And in this microservice, you build them on the end. And what we see now, I call it microservice and micro apps. The app
Hmm.
is more for the job to be done, and the service is more for the workflow. How are we doing the workflow? And the input are processes who are not changing so much,
Yeah.
but it still should be flexible. Now they can all be all built in microservices, but we have them already today. Now let's use it today in the legacy systems. Therefore, if you have them in Workday, if you have them in anywhere in Oracle, etc., but do nothing more and never go to the new version too early, because do the bespoke stuff first in microservices.
And so, this is all very promising, right? There's vendor lock-in that we've talked about. I think there's also an element of, especially in our clientele, there's an element of IT lock-in.
Yeah.
IT owns the software, especially on premise, and they own the modifications and the security stuff. So how does that fit in? You mentioned the user themselves can do
Yeah, AV, that is the most
microservices.
terrible element.
Hmm.
Everyone is afraid for the market cap. And if you
Yeah.
see now in S&P, they're making people afraid. They say, if you're not buying, we're not longer supporting you. That means you
Yeah.
go to a garage, you build a nice BMW, and I say, now I have anywhere a very beautiful car. If you're not buying in a year this car, I will not support your BMW longer. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And everyone is buying, is afraid, but no one is implementing it. And
Hmm.
.NET and AI, it brings a tremendous change in technology. The expectation is over 10 years, we have no longer software. It's what people expect, the smart ones. Software is becoming part of the business, and we
Yeah.
generate this one. Now, if we then give the AI knowledge to the vendor, we are locked in forever.
Yeah.
I mean, never use, even on my Salesforce, say, I give you AI, be afraid. The AI is in the beginning of the processes, more in the upstream of the processes. But if you go to the downstream, you need the AI only one day before you execute a job. And maybe the day you execute a job, maybe you build a smart in 20 minutes, a special new app to do your job 10 times better. And there you bring there the sensors in for IoT, but you bring also the AI elements are in this IT elements are in. We call it
Hmm.
agentic AI. Agentic AI or microservices who are driven by agentic AI solutions. And they are owned by the end user. And they go not only from B to B, they go from B to B to C. They're,
Hmm.
because they're on the downstream, we collaborate.
Yeah.
There we collaborate with the job to be done for the citizen, the job to be done for the electricity companies,
Yeah.
for the manufacturing companies. And in this job to be done, there's a job in the supply chain. And crucial is that we should build workflow apps who can collaborate.
Hmm.
This the element, if you're looking a little back in this area, what we've seen a little before, if these power apps and these app sheets are not built for collaboration apps, they're more built to optimize a spreadsheet.
Yeah. And can you explain downstream a little bit, like
Yeah.
upstream and downstream?
Now you look what is downstream, what is upstream. The upstream, when the mountain give the river comes out in the upstream and is all rough and coming in and
Yeah.
in a rough stream. This means that is the beginning of an if you make a design in an enterprise, what are our main processes? And then you go a little downstream, what are we doing in departments? What are we doing? And then we're splitting up these processes. You have now available to promise, make to order, and all those processes are more downstream processes. And if you go more downstream, the most downstream part is when the rubber meets the road, is when the customer pays the bill. Or is
Yeah.
the customer pays the bill. I mean, and there is where the money is. And there is where IA AI have the 10 times more value the more you go downstream. And if I'm dealing with this mobile, and if I'm dealing with millions of sensors, in the past I have to build it in the old system. But here, 1 second before the transaction, all those sensors can be loaded and have maybe 10 interesting elements. I pick them up.
Mm-hmm.
I do it in late binding on the latest moment. And we call it, they are not only decoupled, but we call it late binding, and they are dynamic. Now, and what we're now doing, if we see downstream processes, they are spreadsheets, they are no longer digital, they are
Yeah.
not, they are not in the dynamic way. The whole enterprise should be a dynamic enterprise. And these processes are dying quite early. And then you do it by, and then everything is done by spreadsheets.
Yeah.
Dangerous, tremendous, and it's no longer dynamic. That means we go from data to metadata now to semantic data. And this is all a semantic world and all dynamic. But I don't need all the data here, but I need here one version of the truth. That means everything is done with a mobile, and some of the upstream data is done once a week.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the financials are done maybe once a month. Who cares? But when I pay the bill, it's just on that moment.
Yeah.
Now, and that means you should understand the data stream of business. And in this beta, and 95, 99% of the data stream is still SQL data from 30 years ago. And we do nothing what Google did already many times with big data, with semantic data, with semantic search. That's what we do with gamification. In the real internet world, for these young kids, we do with this modern stuff. We have all those semantic stuff. If we do Google search, we see all those semantic elements. Now, why are we not taking this data in control? How are we spending it? Now, even for the government to control me, if they can see my social behavior, maybe the control can be much better already with respect for with respect for privacy.
Yeah.
But it's all silos,
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
data stream is not an end to end.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's take some questions. I haven't, this has been fascinating, but the chat box is blowing up. Um, how do you think microservices fit into heavily regulated, compliance-focused industries like government?
Oh, totally. Because what you see, what is the crucial part for microservices is you have APIs.
Mm-hmm.
And in the beginning of this century, with APIs, I built my own APIs with service-oriented SOAP elements, etc. And there we have there now a productized element, what we call the REST API. And in the REST API is a productized tool where internet is built with it, and this tool handles all these compliance elements. They have what we call state machines, and it can handle all this, say, human-driven compliance therein. And this system before cannot do it. And now you do it in this old system, they cannot do it, they cannot handle compliance because you are in a transaction system, and a transaction-oriented system cannot deal with the compliance which change every day. Now,
Right.
second, then, in this compliance world, you have your microservice you build, and you have cybersecurity, and you have all what we call, you have all this DevOps, DevSec security ops.
Yeah.
Now, that are real in let me say, in the beginning of the internet, we did not have all these mature tools. We had a browser, and then we struggled a little with all the tools. But all the
Yeah.
tools, and everyone built their own SaaS elements in what we call platform service themselves. But if you look to Google, they are so deep in cybersecurity, in DevOps, they also know all the consumer data already from
Yeah.
search. Now,
Yeah.
and these two data streams can be combined and easy built in microservices. The microservices are like Lego blocks. The foundation is all the latency, the scalability of the internet. You can easily work with 100,000 people on the same moment, and 10 hours later in midnight, you have only 2 users.
Yeah.
All those elements are there mature. But 95% of the government data is not built in that way. Even more, it's not built in that way. And people are not aware of this. And then they are thinking too good to be true. And they pay their big money, and
Yeah.
they do all this, what we do with this vendors login, and all, if we go to this making these elements therein, is terrible there.
Yeah, and, a question I got in one of our sales presentations, because I like to say that this is a great time to be thinking about modernizing,
Yeah,
because of AI, because of microservices, and one of the I think it was the CIO that says if there's so much uncertainty in the market about where AI will actually be used and be useful, how is
yeah,
it a great time
yeah.
to do this? What are your thoughts on that?
Now, first of all, the perfect is the enemy of the good.
Yeah.
Uh, be not perfect, and second, AI, don't trust AI, and AI could only be a service and assistant, the
Yeah.
butler.
Mm-hmm.
Don't use AI as an executor.
Mm.
And AI, and the best element is AI helps the smart people the most. If you, and the smart means only smart on the job to be done. If you in the downstream understand the job, then AI can be the most helpful for you, and not for the vendor who built it already 5 years before in all these applications.
Yeah.
That means in AI, it's propelling you maybe 4 times, and you have all these services, agents around you who helping you, who do a phone call for you, who do a calculation for you. But the output, we call AI, brings one step further. We call it wisdom. Now, when I started, it was a database. It was data.
Yeah.
Now, then I moved a little from data. We moved to metadata. We call it information.
Right.
Now, and if you look therein in these elements and in all this information stuff, we say, okay, we do it and bring it there together. Now, and then from information, we move it a little further and bring it in also in what we call knowledge. With AI, we have the
Mm-hmm.
knowledge and do it therein. But the knowledge can be dangerous. What you need on the end is a human, we call it wisdom.
Mm.
And the wisdom is by the human. But the knowledge can be propelled by your agent who help you, who can
Yeah.
support you. And that is a collaborative task. And the microservices, simple, can build that and execute that. You can do it in sometimes in 10 minutes or in 2 hours to have them. Because you do it only in the downstream job to be done.
Yeah. So it sounds like the non-sexy stuff, right? The
Yeah,
the business process design, defining the outcomes, empowering users, and all of that is sort of the most important thing if you're going to do a microservice or deploy microservices.
yeah,
Just this architecting what this process should look like and what the outcome should be. Like you say, what is the job to be done? What's the outcome? And
exactly.
then work from
Yeah,
there.
but there's one element now.
Mm.
In the job to be done, we do it more what we called with document management, with Lotus Notes in the past, because we are not aware of the data stream.
Right.
Yeah, we built some text tools, but the tools are not dynamic from the data. You're missing the data. Now,
Yeah.
you can bring the data in, but you have not to rebuild all the data. And I can build the on-prem data very easy out in 1 second out of a SQL database. I bring in a big query from Google. And then I have the same data house coming in once a month, once a day. And it's not so important. I bring the data stream in a semantic world. And there we bring it from processes. And then we go one step further. We go then to what we call the workflow. And
Hmm.
workflow, the processes are more departmental. The workflow is human. And it's also supply chain. It's
Yeah.
collaborative. And that work, there is where the money is. Now, and what we now do, and it's a revolution, with this reverse engineering, now all this old logic is now easy open to me because I know this world and how to do it. And we do amazing stuff in sometimes in 1 day or so. When I have 100,000 screens, all the screens automatically are converted to input AI.
Right.
And they immediately they can all the screens can translate already, meaning oh, what's the data model? And then in 1 day I see the whole data model already. Now the big ones are not aware, but that could be a killer for the big ones. AI bring a tremendous knowledge, and the screens are there who gives you this knowledge. And you see the documentation. You don't know the logic, only the vendor knows it,
Hmm.
or
Yeah.
those who customize it. But it's no longer hidden. That secret, this vendor login will be killed with these reverse engineering tools. And that will become now a revolution. And we do it in Rapid together. It's one tool. We do it in
Yeah.
Rapid in one tool. Immediately, we bring reverse engineering tools already from the old stuff that give me already good information. Then I respect the outcome from the logic.
Mm-hmm.
And I bring this data stream in a new data stream, and we're building the new microservices around the decoupled legacy system. And there is no benefit if you go to a modern cloud solution with an on-prem system. It's good enough.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are losing a lot of money to implement it. 80% is failing. They don't know it, and you pay a lot of money for the extensions and the Capgemini's, etc. And the vendors like it, and the vendor
Yeah.
lock in, protect them, and no one has the care. There's no customer intimacy.
Great word.
It's
Great term. Yeah.
only what's for me good. You should accept this. It's
Mm-hmm.
driven from a vendor. It's driven. I have best practice, but there's no best practice. Downstream, use all your clothing is totally different, but in Bangladesh maybe the core components are more the same.
Yeah.
But downstream, you have your own specific, you have your own classes. Uh, Now that's what we see. How more it goes downstream, the more it's different.
Yeah. Let's take one more question, Jan. What would you say to a public sector agency that says they don't have the budget? Are microservices generally better for speed to value? But how do you prove that?
Now, simply have tremendous budget, and
Yeah.
yet you don't need a budget because you should be more effective with your existing system with all the
Uh-huh.
money to do it. You can win 90% of the cost you can win in government oriented. But not only that, you increase tremendous in the productivity of the people. The job to be done can be twice, three times better.
Mm-hmm.
The citizen is better, and that's what you see. The money, because they spend billions, this is so cheap money to start, and you start no longer big bang. Now, what you say, start small, but do it with you need a guy who is authorized from the top because
Mm-hmm.
in US politics and from the top, everyone is afraid,
100%.
everyone is used. Take a young kid, take some pain points, and rebuild it with microservice. It costs nothing, and you do it in a few days. But you need although they do not understand, you need an executive sponsorship,
Yeah.
and if you do it, and then you see the difference step by step. That means it's no longer big bang. You should not go to a real what we say do again all these elements that we go to a new element and go new system. There's the biggest point there in what we see.
Yeah. And I just put a QR code up that has the executive's guide to ERP system modernization. We need to update this because based on this conversation, there's a third option. You don't have to uproot your existing infrastructure.
But the best one before again, what is the biggest problem? You dance with the devil. The biggest problem is a tender. Never do a tender.
Mm-hmm.
And the government should make it that you can do already simple process. And why should you don't have a big problems? Why should you do a project more costly than 1 million? Could be, say, 100K is more than enough. Why can you not do Lego blocks below the tender level?
Mm-hmm.
Do it yourself because you are misleaded by the tender. And
And
the winner of the tender is the guy who makes these problems from you in your last system. Because all the knowledge is then known by the tender and by the vendor and by the system integrators.
when you say tender, it's RFP for
Yeah,
the
this
US
RFP.
audience. Yeah.
Now, this RFP is the most dangerous part because the explanation of the RFP is never the outcome. And then the guys in on the other part are too weak and do not have the knowledge, and they are manipulated in this whole process. There's so much mafia in this world.
Unless you use us. I mean, again, this is a shameless plug, but you need somebody guiding you because they sometimes it's the thresholds and the laws, and it really depends on who the purchasing agent is on the government side. But you're right. For the most part, they don't know how to
Yeah.
necessarily
And
put specs
always,
together.
yeah, we call it phase zero. Go to a
Hmm.
phase zero and always do it with an independent consultant. Always.
Yeah.
Because the benefit for the consulting driven services are related to the vendor's solution.
Right.
Everything is unique. All the incentives are coming from the vendor driven solutions. Always there. 90%
Yeah.
of the big money. And therefore you're misleaded. I've been there. I built it.
Hmm.
We know what it is. And
Yeah.
and you're locked in. The only protection now is the vendor lock-in. Avoid vendor lock-in. Try to do it with late binding, that you take your microservices step by step, decouple them. And there are many people who know that, understand this now today. Very simple. Go to maybe, why not tie a Google platform? I'm not saying you can go Amazon still or Microsoft, but again, if you take this, even if you look to Windows, it's still extremely old fashioned. And why are you not taking object-oriented tools like Google today or so, and bring that and try some things and bring it in and see what it means. But
Yeah.
that could be Amazon, and then never take monolithic. Take always best of breed, what is proven. Could be a domestic solution, what you have. Could be a vertical solution in governments, but also in utilities, etc., where you have some
Hmm.
specific vertical solutions. The best of breed solutions is not good enough there.
Yeah, and there's a raging debate in the public sector right now, best of breed versus monolithic. And
Hmm.
depending on who you talk to, if they're
Yeah, of
selling a
course.
best of breed product, best of breed is the way to go.
And what is then the if you look to the monolithic solution and say, okay, we bring the AI, and then you're ever in prison. You
Yeah.
never come out of prison.
Hmm.
And what is monolithic? If you have these products, they have been oracles, is only, I call it fusion, I call it confusion, but they are not united together. They're all M&A products. The only element who's integrated is the bill.
Hmm.
You have one bill. That's the only element. You buy all these products, but these products downstream have nothing to do with each other. They are M&A products, and they build it in one catalog,
Hmm.
and then they have you totally under control. Is the most dangerous element. It's
So
very
what?
big.
Yeah.
The beauty is, no one is fired. You're not fired by SAP. You're not fired by Oracle. In the past, you were not fired by IBM. And the CIOs have often not enough knowledge to understand this. And IT is too isolated, does not understand the business. In today's world, business is aligning with IT. And
Hmm.
IT is now belonging a part of the business. And in my opinion, the CIO should report in this world on the COO. And maybe you have the data analysts who support maybe on the CEO who understand the data stream, but the business is becoming more productization. It's more consumerized in this modern, say, infrastructure as a service. All those components with Kubernetes, with this, what we see, this containerizations, they're all simple elements who are real, I should say, consumerized. It's
Right.
not rocket science. You can do it yourself.
Yeah. So how would you even start? Like, let's give you an example. A pretty large government agency that has, let's say, they've been using JD Edwards for 20, 30 years,
Yeah,
plus they have some ancillary systems.
yeah,
Their main ERP is Excel. Where do you
yeah.
begin? How do you do
That's the
this?
biggest problem. Now, what we do first, what you say, sunset this element like GD Edwards, etc. You
Hmm.
have your financials. You do the manufacturing part. I mean, they use only a small part. They use maybe more project control.
Right.
We built a totally new project control solution for 20,000 users in a big automotive company because that is only simple done with bills with purchase orders, but not with the bill of material part.
Right.
You can easily decouple that. I mean, first
Yeah.
I should say, sunset GD Edwards, decouple it, you use it, and you bring all the bespoke elements already in microservices. Now, maybe you take then for the financial part, you take maybe Workday.
Hmm.
Uh, and for if you do something with CRM, it could be Salesforce, who are better in those elements. Or you can maybe take a local financial solution, which may be good enough. You payroll, etc. Do it never in one system. No, but all those systems they have nothing like an end-to-end process. They
Right.
only provide you as a silo.
Hmm.
And then all those silos with the REST API can easily be adopted in, and not to the spreadsheet. That's the most dangerous part. The spreadsheet, you're dead.
Hmm.
And after the spreadsheet, you even can send a PDF. You
Yeah.
do not have now the spreadsheet is over. We adopt those spreadsheets and make it dynamic. That means in this rapid elements, what we do, we adopted all those, say, traditional solutions, and then surround them with Lego blocks with microservices. And then on the end, you bring this no-code part instead of spreadsheets. And And there you can build already, you can unite them already also with databases also together, and everything will be done in big data,
Yeah.
where you can deal with IoT. And more important is from that moment, you have a data stream where Google has some things like what we call customer data platform. They know the data from the data, the customer from the customer. You can connect the same data stream out of your supply chain with your processes. Now that will increase tremendous the value of your task, what you do in a supply chain element.
Yeah.
They are becoming semantic.
So, my theory has been that people move, especially in my clientele, they'll move or think about changing ERP systems or financial systems because there's a 20% element of the whole
Yeah,
work stream that doesn't work. They're
yeah,
unhappy. The
yeah,
20% hurts, and then you will move to another one where you fix the 20% and some other
yeah,
20% is broken.
yeah.
So microservices can fit exactly where
Absolutely.
you
But it's
want it to
also
be.
different. If you
Yeah.
look the following, most things are done with document management by hand,
Hmm.
spreadsheet, document management, and if you see then all these elements and with Office type of solutions. That's it. That means if you look to the ERP is not coming not further than 25% of all the functionalities, but the most strong functionality in the beginning. Now, then another 25% is going to bring all those silos together.
Hmm.
ERP is not a process. ERP is a silo, and and it's isolated because if you have five systems, they have the same customer elements and they overrule the same stuff. Now, could be nicer if you build everything in microservices, but today maybe a little too complicated. But I can do it. I do it with many things, but step by step. But if you first take care that you decouple all those silos and bring then the process together and do that already with microservices, with APIs. And then you have an end-to-end value as what we call one version of the truth and dynamic. It's not dying. And then you bring the rule-based elements in, especially in the governments, all those rule-based elements that you should change the rule 1 second for a transaction. And the rule should on runtime, and that's what we do in Rapid, we are flexible on runtime, we're even flexible. You should have no vendor lock-in. Now we generate everything in plain Java. That means, and you can run it everywhere you like. And then more downstream, you take this micro apps and build them on top of it.
Hmm. So let's take a question, Jan. This is a good one. What's the difference between open source and microservices
Now,
from Ashish?
first, it's the same, more or less, but microservices are used with most open source, or a part is used to unite all this open source. We do everything in open source, but the
Hmm.
core element is what we call infrastructure as a service. It could be Amazon, Microsoft, or Google. Now, they are uniting and respecting all this open source because, therefore, it's so cheap, much cheaper than in the traditional systems. And open source, and what we do, we call it every young. We have a bill of material. Every microservice in our tools can be replaced every moment because I'm generating the code,
Yeah.
and it's like a bill of material. We call it a software bill of material. If a new microservice is coming out, immediately I can replace that and bring it in. Therefore, the software should become also every young and not like a Tesla car or anywhere electric car. Every time you load it, the autopilot, you have new functions. Maybe you're not aware of it.
Yeah.
That is what software can do. You have no material.
Hmm. Right. So more questions. So Kyler asks if a DMV could modernize its appointment scheduling service without rewriting the entire licensing system.
Yeah.
DMV is the motor vehicles department here in the US.
Yeah. Hi, Kyla. Nice to meet you again. And you're smart. And Kyla knows it extremely good how to do this one. What you see, this whole automotive stuff, etc., that could be done in a totally new way. What we call we are a manufacturing of software, and we
Hmm.
manufacture that. But this reverse engineering tools, I have no longer the secret from all these legacy systems. They are now open because every screen is explaining what's in. Now, and this now and the step by step in every week will increasing, and there we will see tremendous improvements. That could be a dying element of legacy systems. Now, although that it takes a while to do these elements, etc.
Jan, who once you put this infrastructure and this architecture, Lego blocks around major systems in place, who who keeps them alive? Who keeps them ticking? I know the end users can change things, but is
Yeah, but
there?
when you do two answers. First, you have an
Yep.
independent consultant help you.
Okay.
Second, you take more, we see now more, what we call a boutique small ISVs who own you, but most you do it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Take ownership yourself and you ask a little some resources from more smaller ISVs who understand your downstream processes. And the upstream should be known by yourself. Otherwise, you have no even a meaning for your entity. If you do not understand your core processes, why should you run this entity? Now we rely on all these outside vendors,
Yeah.
and the productization of this infrastructure as a service components makes you so easy, so open. You're easy. You can see where used, who is using some things. You increase tremendous effectiveness of humans.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yep, I hear you.
Sorry, there was some disturbance. Okay, no, that's fascinating because the end users then get to when we talk about agents, right? When
Yeah,
there's a big promise that you will have your own agent tool set. Oh, well, we lost Jan.
it's only you can see. Yeah, we are back.
There you go.
Yeah,
Sorry about
yeah.
that.
The agent will become your assistant, but it should be the assistant for the downstream workflow process in the enterprise. And the
Hmm.
more downstream, there is the money. On the end, when the rubber meets the road, the bill is paid. And
Yeah.
then the more downstream, the more value. And therefore, focus. Therefore, I can replace the ERP system, but why should I do it? It's better to increase the downstream processes. There is much more value. And for a while, except for a while, the legacy system over time you sunset it, but don't make it revolutionary. Use it. Take care that you understand the data, the output data stream from these silos, and
Hmm.
then step by step you optimize the downstream. And there you know it because you deal with your customer. And in downstream, you have in the upstream, 100,000 people are working in a big company, a factory. But in the downstream, only 5 people are executing on the project.
Yeah.
And
So
yeah,
where do you see? So I'm sure the monolithic, as you call it, mafia software,
mm,
industrial software players probably don't like this narrative or this option because
yeah.
it
Kyla knows
yeah.
it, but you need these people who understand, who are open, who have the guts to explain this.
Hmm.
Most people are afraid because my bread is there. And if I'm too much afraid, I say, okay, I agree with you, but I cannot say it because for my job, for even I'm supporting these big vendors, etc. There's a lot of for the mafia also a lot of people are afraid. If you look then in, okay, yeah, only I can generic, I will explain a little to you. Now, let's have the guts. We need we need not say entrepreneurs, we need intrapreneurs.
Mm.
An entrepreneur is an owner of a workflow. And I'm saying we have in Baan already an slogan. We say, okay, for us, my slogan is from the beginning, don't ask your boss. It's better if you ask, it's better to ask for forgiveness than for permission. Ethics, you should bring ethics in, is a culture.
Yeah.
You give ownership. Now we are controlling. You give the ownership of the people on the downstream processes. Now by regulation, you all do it there. It's a change in attitude, and then we can do so much more. We have more joy if we do our job, and
Hmm.
this say intrapreneurs are executing and increasing permanently the execution of their job.
That's an amazing insight. Take ownership of your own
Always,
uh, processes internally.
yeah,
With
yeah.
start with help from consultants, maybe.
Yeah,
But
yeah, a little, but also
yeah.
if you realize the AI is no longer difficult because the AI is now embedded in these simple tools,
Hmm.
and you know the execution of the workflow. That
Yeah.
means you know the value of the AI, although you couldn't understand the language models, but that's all already productized, and that is so much. And if you delay, if you give them to the vendors in the beginning, you're not even not aware what they're doing. and you are locked in forever. You're golden cuffs. You say,
Hmm.
gold is gold, but yeah, still you can't quit.
So what happened to the promise of SaaS? Because that was the promise that trust a vendor and the product for life, and they will give you the
Yeah, no,
latest modifications and they'll take care of you. What happened?
no nonsense. No one cared for you because if you look to it, never can be for life, and
Yeah.
never is what you do. What you see in society, all small services, and then you can stay for life if you have the chance every day. Maybe you have the same grocery where you go for 20 years. Every day you have a choice, but you come back. There is trust. There is no trust longer.
Yeah.
People more or less hate the big vendors. Why? Because you mislead it with this. If you go in this tender, if you're losing the stuff, you can't do it, and you're afraid to explain that. What means it? And this all those elements is by fear. Then we are driven by fear, and it was complicated in the past, but it's now simplified. The car you can drive yourself. Why can you not drive then even your business yourself? And the car is an advanced element. If you see this, and in the car, many times the car, the autonomous car can help you better, but not the end. You need the steering wheel again
Yeah.
for the wisdom. The wisdom is always a human, but the agent can help you tremendous to improve your job. And
Hmm.
the job is more simple. You can oversee it, and more, it should not replace jobs. It should be optimize jobs. AI.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
brings new ways, new elements of service. We should not be afraid of it. We can give totally new service. Why, if I'm a government organization, what can I do not more for my citizen? A lot. Now, why should I not focus? Hey, I have all these citizens and I know them and I can do and I have trustful position. Why can I do a lot more for them?
Absolutely. And let's wrap with that great thought. Wisdom is what will drive you forward. AI is not going to replace you. It'll make smart people smarter.
Yeah.
And I like saying, train yourself. This is the greatest moment in humanity in some cases, and you have
Yeah.
to educate yourself.
And today we are slaves
Mm.
in this whole society. Only even why should we should not respect the agentic seven. They they do no business. They,
Yeah.
they do gamification. They have only tools. Why instead of seven companies who have 70,000 billions of market cap, why could we not have 70,000 new unicorns who do it all themselves? If you do it yourself, you're small, you become a unicorn.
Yeah.
And you compete with each other. It's more competition. The value will go to the business and not on this moment the value is only go to the tools. Why should Apple, and do only for me entertainment, have this big value? It's no meaning. I should own it, not Apple. I respect this one.
Yeah.
All those toys, they are monolithic and they have something for me where I'm misleaded or I'm slavery from them and bring me something. We should take care and we should do it critical. Deal with them and do it only for the job to be done. When the whole day slavery of the entertainment, I cannot do my job. But when it is a skill for me to execute and have a little fun, then I trust my social stuff. Even I bring it in because I know tomorrow I have some private stuff. I can do my job. The collaboration and communication can be much better. I
Yeah.
can have more fun. They trust me more because we follow each other. Although we more privacy, but even more openness. Don't be afraid. And the power is in the end users. The power is in the wisdom, and not in the AI.
Love it. Love it. Jan, it's been an honor and a pleasure to have you with us.
Yeah,
Can you
my
tell us where to find you, what you're up to, and
Yeah, Jan Baan. Then even if you if you go to LinkedIn, if a lot I do a lot of LinkedIn messages and stories, and let me know. Send me an email or so. That means even if you're interested in your organization, I have to be retired, but I'm still given my age, but still too much involved. My three sons are running it, but I have time, even in some cases. Even I'm not here for your business. There's something I can even collaborate some things and bring there in, and I do many also on LinkedIn. Many stories are there, what you can follow. And I have my autobiography. If you're interested, let me know. I can send you a link.
Excellent. I'll definitely take you up on that. But
Okay.
thank you so much, audience. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for your questions. We will be This stream will be on our YouTube channel. Please go and subscribe, and then we will also post it on our podcast Untangled. So stay in touch. If we didn't get to your questions, I will respond to them individually in LinkedIn. But we will see you next week for another insightful session. Thank you, Jan.
Okay. Thank you. It was my pleasure.